This is Defenders TV Podcast episode 154 with our Damnation crossover part 15. The spoiler-filled discussion of Doctor Strange issue number 389.
Hey guys, it's Rod Reyes here, artist of Marvel's Damnation comic book event. Welcome to the podcast crossover between Inner Demons, Sons of the Dragon, Defenders TV Podcast, and Into the Night. Every issue reviewed, all tie-in books discussed. May all be damned.
Hi, this is Ray from Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast. You're listening to Defenders TV Podcast right now, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Welcome back, fellow Defenders, to this, the final review in the Damnation comic book crossover event, where we are looking at Doctor Strange tie-in comic issue 389. I am one of your hoary hosts, John.
And I'm your other hoary host, Derek. Welcome back, Flameheads and Iron Fist fans.
And as well, Loonies. And thank you to Ray from Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast. And of course, Rod Reyes for their introduction to this crossover event, Damnation.
It'll be a shame not to play those every episode from now on. This is the final one. As Rod Reyes said, every issue covered. All 15 issues have been covered by each of our podcasts. Ourselves, we did the Doctor Strange coverage for all of this event, and we did Damnation number 4, which you may have heard last week. We had Sons of the Dragon, who did all the Iron Fist tie-ins, and Damnation number 1. Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast, where Ray is from, they covered Scarlet Spider and Damnation number 2, and Ghost Rider, the Inner Demons podcast. They covered Damnation number 3 and the Johnny Blaze Ghost Rider number 1 issue, which was really, really good as well.
Yes, absolutely. And so we are here now with our spoiler-filled review of this final part of the Damnation crossover. Doctor Strange, yes. Last time we saw him, he was in a necro realm, potentially for eternity. Will he escape? Will he get out? You'll find out shortly.
Or if you read Damnation number 4. Yeah.
And of course, for the context of all these comics, please head on over and subscribe to Defenders TV Podcast. Just go to defenderstvpodcast.com and hit any of the subscribe buttons that you wish to. There's Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or any damned or blessed podcast catcher. Please subscribe, rate us, leave a review, and of course, as always, share the love and share the podcast.
And if you've missed any of the reviews for Doctor Strange Damnation, on our website at defenderstvpodcast.com, there is a page, Doctor Strange Damnation, obviously, which catalogues all of the reviews that have been there so far. So in case you miss any of them, pop in and have a listen to some great reviews in there from the other guys and ourselves.
Yes, so with that, Derek, you want to give us some of the comic issue details?
This issue was written by Johnny Cates, who has been writing the main arc of the story as well. And the artist again is Nico Henscheron. Letters, VC's Corey Pettit. The cover artist, an excellent cover on this one from Mike Del Mondo. And the colour assistant was Laurent Grossat. John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with your read-through, I suppose, of the cover of this issue?
Sure. Last time, Mephisto imprisons Stephen Strange's soul in an immaterial subrealm of hell. Meanwhile, Bats, Stephen's ghost dog friend, possessed his body in Las Vegas and tried to retrieve Strange's soul. But the appearance of Clay, Stephen's former wife, led them astray and into a confrontation with Shuma-Gorath. Fortunately, the souls of the Avengers, Black Panther, Falcon, Captain Marvel, Hawkeye, Thor, and Jane Foster, the rules in necrotic subrealms are beyond our understanding, had been sent to the same place. They forced Shuma-Gorath to retreat temporarily, but may not have succeeded without the help of Dormammu. The events of this issue take place concurrently with those in Doctor Strange Damnation issue 4. Yes, Dormammu showed up and pledged to help Stephen Strange.
I know, what a great moment at the end of Doctor Strange issue 388. We talked all about that on our last episode. This is Bleeding Neon, the final issue, part 4 of all of the Damnation events. Really cool.
Yes, well, there is the potential for the most unlikely of team-ups, Dormammu and Doctor Strange.
Yeah, will they be new bros in the future? We will get into it. But as always, with our coverage of the Doctor Strange issues, we are going to talk through our 5 incantations, our 5 favourite moments of the issue, or our 5 big discussion points. And as we always do, our first one is previously on Damnation. Where were we? What's happened so far, and where does this story take place, John?
So, as we mentioned when we last left Doctor Strange in issue 388, he was about to team up with Dormammu to get out of this Necro sub-realm. So, really interesting stuff. And, of course, he came across the Avengers Souls as well, but also massive battles ensuing with Shuma Gorath, and really how he gets out of this locked realm and get through the portal back to Earth, to see ultimately what happened then in Damnation issue 4, where he is able to, with the power of all the Avengers combined within him, is managed to take down Mephisto ultimately and lock him away for eternity in his own Hotel Inferno.
Yeah, and a lot of this was caused by him following Clay, his ex-wife, or his former wife, I suppose. So this story takes place because Doctor Strange wants to actually find out if she's okay. Was there something in that? Had she been possessed? Is that her real soul, I suppose, that we've seen in the previous issues of Doctor Strange? So we have him sitting down and explaining the battle to her as this issue kicks off.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, it is Clay was used by Mephisto to trick him, to bring him down into this sub-realm of Necronomicon or something. I don't know, yeah. And yeah, there's that whole thing of his feelings towards Clay, his former wife, and whether he believes that she is the one that has come to rescue him. As we've heard, Wong has had someone on the inside. There's been many different ideas as to who this could be. Is it Scarlet Spider? Is it Clay? Who is this person? Now, from issue 4 of Damnation, we certainly know who it ultimately was, and it was Johnny Blaze, who came in as King of Hell. As we know, the difference in time between Hell and Earth, minutes on Earth is an eternity in Hell, and so Johnny Blaze has managed to get himself appointed as the Lord of Hell on the Hell Throne, with his Hell Crown and a lot of other helly kind of stuff going on.
But not his Hell Cycle, because Mephisto had that.
Yes.
So, yes.
So it wasn't Clay ultimately, and it is really interesting now that he simply, early on in this issue then, we see that he's sat having coffee in a cafe somewhere in New York, speaking and describing a lot of the events that have gone on in this sub-realm to someone who we don't know to begin with, and that then progresses and transpires that it is Clay. The real Clay, we think. So I think with that we should go on to incantation number 2, because during this conversation that Doctor Strange is having with Clay, we see the explanation of the battle in Hell as to why Dormammu is also there and how he got there. And we are told about this huge, ferocious war that has happened between Mephisto, Dormammu, Nightmare, and Shuma Gorath in this sub-realm, this necrotic sub-realm, and ultimately it is Mephisto that wins that day, and he banishes the other Lords of Hell into this realm for eternity, and they are now also trying to get out. And we have some great splash pages here in some of the early pages of the comic. I think page 4 and 5, again, we were looking at this electronically on Comixology, but also, we have some really great artwork here. I absolutely adore on page 3, where you get all the Lords of Hell, Shuma Gorath, Mephisto, Nightmare, and Dormammu, where they're all getting locked into the realm, and they then have this mighty war to see who ultimately will be able to come through. And of course, Doctor Strange plays a part in this by bringing Las Vegas back. He somehow unlocks it, and ultimately the winner is Mephisto. But on that page, I love Nightmare. I mean, I think Nightmare is one of my favorite Doctor Strange villains, antagonists. Such cool storylines can come from this. You know, there is that moment where he's there riding on the horse, I think on page 4, where the war is taking place, and it is just so good. But ultimately, Mephisto is the winner here.
Yeah, absolutely. If you've read this comic on digital, I'd highly recommend picking it up, a physical copy, if you can pick one up. I did have to go out and buy a copy of it just to see how beautiful the artwork by Nico Henchron is. These moments are just fantastic. It's pretty safe to say that these 4 villains are probably Doctor Strange's biggest villains. There's been many storylines with Nightmare before, big storylines with Dormammu, obviously, Mephisto being central to Damnation, and then Shuma-Gorath has also had a big moment within this event where he was battling against all of the Avengers to drive him back into the Hell Dimension. But I do love, as Doctor Strange explains, this reason for all of these things happening, where he's going, well, I brought Las Vegas back, left a bit of a gaping hole, so obviously all of my enemies would be reaching out and trying to get at me. It's kind of the price you have to pay for bringing back Las Vegas to Earth.
Yes, I mean, it was just so beautifully put together on the pages. Really, really nice. And I have to say, just fantastic artwork, I think. And as I say, we didn't get much of Nightmare at all, really, throughout this crossover event. He's really just there in name only, but I mean, one of the interesting things was with the MCU and the Doctor Strange film was that initially Scott Derrickson put forward a Nightmare storyline to Feige. And of course, Kevin Feige really kind of said, well, we need to introduce the character, and I can get that. But certainly I just feel a Nightmare film with Doctor Strange done by Scott Derrickson, given what he did in Insidious, I think could be really, really good. And where you move the MCU into a slight horror direction, actually, it's just, I think that would be absolutely awesome, because I think as well, Doctor Strange works so well when it's dark, dangerous, and disturbing. And a lot of disturbing things can happen in all of these different dimensions and sub-realms. And I think Nightmare would be a fantastic entryway into that kind of horror world for the MCU.
Yeah, I agree, but I do say that Kevin Feige definitely made the right choice to start.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, to start out Doctor Strange being much more grounded character and having his villain appear at the end of the film after you've introduced all of the magical realms, having to introduce the magical realms and something like Nightmare, which is quite a significant departure for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Could have been a little bit too much, but I'm hoping that if we do see a Doctor Strange 2, which we're hoping is coming in 2020, that we do see Nightmare in there, because some very interesting storylines, and I'd love to see an MCU horror film, as you say, John. That would be quite cool.
But Dormammu doesn't just explain this battle in hell, he also explains that Clay was a projection from Mephisto. He says it himself, he would know if his niece was trapped in this necrotic realm as well. So we really do get confirmation here that the Clay is purely a figment of Doctor Strange's imagination, projected there by Mephisto. And Dormammu also explains that, in order to open this portal, that him and Doctor Strange will need to combine their powers in order to open it up, because individually they will not be strong enough. And this really has a fantastic kind of element of, do they trust him? Do they not? It really is. Dormammu pledges that he's not going to attack Earth, because I do love that moment where, Dormammu and Strange are talking about having to reopen the portal with their combined powers, but that this would be a passage to Earth. And Doctor Strange goes, which is literally my entire job to prevent from happening, i.e. Dormammu reaching Earth. Yeah. That's his job. He is the protector of Earth from mystical and magical dangers. And yet here, Dormammu's plan effectively means that he will be spat out from the portal into and onto Earth, I should say. Yeah. So I love this kind of indecision that Doctor Strange has here about whether or not he should combine his powers with Dormammu. It's really, really good, I think.
Yeah, I love that it's Jane Foster that kind of points out the predicament that they're in. Effectively, either their souls are trapped for eternity in hell, or they work with Dormammu and possibly bring hell to Earth. Which one is the better scenario? Maybe we need to calm down and slowly think about this and talk it over between the Avengers. Love that moment. But we do see our twist here. Onto incantation number 3.
First off, I do have to say, I loved when Hawkeye goes, point of order here, can we have an Avengers-only conversation about this plan? No offense to the magic supervillain that is Dormammu. And of course here, as you say, then we get this trick. It's a one-upmanship, I think, really, where they agree to Dormammu's plan, but on conditions that the Avengers go through first, then Doctor Strange will send Dormammu to his realm, and then finally Stephen Strange will follow through. Of which Dormammu's kind of going, so you would leave yourself here unprotected without the Avengers and be the last person to come through, putting me through into Earth first. But we have the deception from Dormammu. I love that moment where he lifts his sword up after they have opened up the portal again. But that deception is trumped by Stephen Strange and the Avengers, which is really, really cool.
Yeah, I have to say, 2 of my favourite moments occur in this section here. One is as Strange is presenting the plan to Dormammu, he starts off with, the deal is first that Thor breaks your legs, which is what's just happened to Stephen.
And you just get, Stephen, fine. Really good.
Really good. And the second one, obviously, our favourite character in the entire Damnation event, I think, is Bats. And that moment where Stephen asks him to watch over Dormammu. He's just a ghost dog. He doesn't have any powers, which he sadly tells Dormammu and then realises, actually, probably shouldn't have told you that, should I?
It's really, really good. I mean, just that whole sequence of the conversation where Stephen Strange goes, watch Dormammu, kill him if he tries anything. And it's like, Dormammu's going, what is your purpose? What is your story? Are you the person to slay Dormammu? And Bats kind of goes, I don't know why he said that, but don't tell him that I basically can't kill you. Maybe you can get inside his head like he did with Stephen. Maybe. But then he goes, shit, did I just make a deal with the the devil or Dormammu? Really, really good. I actually like these little bits of humor here through this comic issue. It was really good. I think Bats brings so much levity here. He's like the deadpan delivery that I kind of at least read it as. It is so good. And I think him and Doctor Strange work again so well, and his little interaction with Dormammu. I mean, I do like the panel just after Doctor Strange has told him kill him if he tries, and he's kind of got that poised, pointed look as he's looking up at Dormammu, watching intently, ready to strike at a moment's notice.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the things that's been such a strength from Donny Cates' writing over the course of this entire event, and really all of Doctor Strange so far that he's been involved in. And he's really got a great balance between the humour and lightness, and also the darkness and horror of Doctor Strange. I think he's got a really good handle on the character. It could be very difficult to write a good Doctor Strange story, especially when you're not dealing with the creation of Doctor Strange, the origin story, as so many writers have dealt with over the past. Doing this kind of story, it's just been really good reading what Donny Cates has done.
Yeah, and I mean, the other great thing here then is that once they trump Dormammu's deception here, it transpires that their plan is that the Avengers have agreed to stay in Hell to fight back the Lords of Hell that are assembled. And you get a fantastic panel where you see Nightmare and Shuma-Gorath coming back towards where the Avengers, Doctor Strange and Dormammu are, and they're there ready to fight them off, to allow Stephen Strange to go back to Earth to make things right. And it's really the proof that Doctor Strange truly does have friends. Now, whether he understands that he does is another matter. I think as Sorcerer Supreme, it's a very isolating role within the world of the MCU or Marvel Comics. You're kind of on the astral plane, meditating, watching, probably looking to see 14 million combinations maybe, and really just sometimes he probably loses sight of that there are people there that are supporting him, helping him. So this is a really nice moment, because a lot of this tie-in comic has been about Doctor Strange feeling as though he has messed up in a big way. He's alienated a lot of people, and even him trying to bring Las Vegas back was him trying to do some kind of reconciliation as to things that he's done. Sometimes he does things that seemingly would put him in a villain role. Certainly, depending on who your favorite character is,
Yep.
you know, whether that's banishing the Hulk, whether he's kind of part of the Illuminati, deciding to be fairly sort of high-handed with what they do to protect Earth,
Yeah.
and what decisions they make. So, you know, he's here really, he's trying to correct things and make things right. And I think even now, then, in doing that, Las Vegas has kind of been a failed experiment from him, really. And again, it's kind of set him back to square one. But here, we do have proof that Strange truly does have friends within the Avengers, and that they still trust him to be able to do the right thing and to make everything correct again.
And it does kind of explain a moment within Damnation number 4 where the Avengers are kind of high-fiving each other, saying that they'd save the day, and we saw Elsa Bloodstone kind of going, oh, typical Avengers taking credit for everything that we did. Well, in fact, in Doctor Strange, we see they actually did something quite significant. They held back the Lords of Hell while Strange was able to get back to Earth and help to take down Mephisto. So it's quite good that we've gotten to see this within Doctor Strange. So they did do something quite significant. So that's a good thing, right?
Yeah, definitely. And again, that whole artwork, I think, of Doctor Strange and Dormammu combining their powers to break the portal and to open it up again, and then Nightmare, Shumagorath all riding to attack Dormammu, the Avengers, and Stephen Strange is great. You know, over pages 13 and 14, some really fantastic artwork again, which I really, really enjoyed so much, and it just complements the writing so well. You know, it goes from being so incredibly rich and busy, but in a good way, to very simple and very poignant or just meaningful in terms of the artwork and how the writing complements that. So, I mean, absolutely fair dues to Donny Cates and Henrichon for combining their own powers into a fantastic set of Doctor Strange Damnation issues here, and Doctor Strange tie-in comics to the Damnation event.
Absolutely, yeah. Speaking of going from quite a busy part of the story to a quiet part of the story, back to the cafe, incantation number 4, Stephen's discussion with Clay. I have to say the choice here of Donny Cates to stop the story of Stephen Strange before he actually beats Mephisto. That story being told in Damnation number 4, effectively, but it's just that moment when he says, I'm escaping from hell, and then, well, that's kind of all you need to know about the story to Clay. You know, all I wanted to know was, are you okay? Are you still alive? It's a really interesting choice to not repeat what we saw in Damnation 4 and to stop the story exactly there. He doesn't even say, you know, Ghost Rider came back and we banished him or anything like that. He just goes, so how are you, Clay?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really, it's such an interesting choice. You know, almost offhandedly, you know, in one panel, it's like, and then this, and this happened. And of course, there is the editor's note, of course, in that. It does point you towards Damnation issue 4 if you want the full on comic story of that. But yeah, really interesting choice that ultimately here, his focus in this story is on Doctor Strange coming out of the Necro realm, out of hell, and not the downfall of Mephisto at the hands of him once he's escaped. And for him, you know, it really is making sure that Clay is okay as well. You know, this is why they are meeting, that he's just confirming that she is A, still alive, and B, in fine fettle.
Yes, and trying to work out why it was Mephisto chose her. So in Stephen's head, he says that the reason why he chose her is because she's the only one he hasn't let down lately.
Yeah, exactly.
She's been let down quite a few times by him over the 50 or so years that she's been in the comic books with him over time. But recently, he hasn't done anything too bad. So is that the reason why Mephisto chose her? Clay has a very different opinion, though.
It really is. From what she can tell, it's not her that Stephen cares about. And indeed, even Stephen Strange says maybe it was from outdated information that he used Clay's image.
Mephisto has old files or something.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, you know, why did Clay work so effectively? Because these do have such a long and rich history. And of course, you know, Stephen and Clay, whilst they are separated, no longer husband and wife, there is still that history and relationship there, and that's probably why it worked so effectively. But for Clay, it's that, really he should have used someone else if he really wanted to trap Stephen Strange in that Necro realm for eternity, because that person means so much more to Stephen Strange.
Yeah.
And of course, we finally get round to who this is. Obviously, it's Zelma, but I love the fact that Stephen Strange just goes back into this mopey and depressed phase. Clay goes, "Stop being such a baby. What have you lost?" is what she says. She's really trying to, a bit like Bats' conversation previously. What is it that you have lost? Do you think you've got no one that cares for you, no one that loves you? Yet the Avengers helped you. You've even said it. You just cannot see it. But ultimately, Doctor Strange is looking to reconnect with his friend Zelma, who was such a good team up with him. And she's like, just call her.
Yeah.
And I think it's really great that at the end of this book, he's sat on the steps of the Sanctum Sanctorum and he calls her and she answers. Yeah. And it's to be continued.
Exactly.
So really very cool. And in fact, we get a nice little image there at the end of the comic book of Doctor Strange, Zelma, and Bats hiding from Spider-Man.
Well, that's next issue, isn't it?
Yeah.
Zelma had previously worked with Doctor Strange for many, many issues. Definitely his new partner, along with Wong. The two of them worked very closely together, but she walked away when Stephen infused her with magic and didn't tell her what it was for. This was basically hiding the keys to the Sorcerer Supreme from Loki, and eventually finds out that he had put it inside of her without telling her, which is a big betrayal. So I wonder how Stephen will make up for it. But this whole storyline throughout Damnation really has been about finding out that Stephen Strange does have allies within the Marvel Universe, that there are other people that he's able to depend upon. What we did see earlier on with the Avengers taking on Dormammu and the other Lords of Hell is they say to him, well, the reason we did this was because, well, you would have done it without a second thought.
Yeah, exactly.
If it led to the right conclusion, if it led to a win for us, you would have done it. And that's kind of where we have our Doctor Strange. That's that moment where you realize all of those choices he's made over the years as a member of the Illuminati, as you mentioned, banishing Hulk to space. These are all choices and difficult things that he has to do to make the world a safer place and a better place. That's what makes him the superhero that he is.
And it potentially doesn't endear him to his allies, and it certainly means that there can be big betrayals here, or people just thinking, well, I've been used here. And I think that's what Zelma was like. She thought that they had, that special tutor and tutee relationship, student and teacher here. And, and in the end, she expected that openness from him, and he couldn't tell her in order so that the plan would work. And I think that, like with Wong, keeping the inside man secret from everyone else. Scarlet Spider thought it was him. So, sometimes these plans have to be done in a way so that not all the information is known by everyone. But, really nice scene between Clay and Doctor Strange here, where he's really, they get to the crux of the situation, why Stephen is feeling so lonely and so sort of out of sorts, despite all the allies and friends that he has. And that is because he still needs to make it right with Zelma, ultimately.
Exactly.
And I do also like the fact that Clay gave out about his beard as well. It was, why have you still got that thing on your face? And in fact, I think she goes, go home, shave off that mess, and then call Zelma.
Exactly. Let's get on to our final incantation, I suppose. Incantation number 5, our final incantation for all of Damnation. It's really final thoughts. Where does this book land? Where are all the characters? And was there anything that didn't happen that you expected to happen? I think for me, I expected in this kind of big event that we'd lose a big character in Doctor Strange's universe. We have got a character that was sent off to hell, which was Johnny Blaze, Ghost Rider. So that is the main casualty, I suppose, is Johnny Blaze not being on Earth anymore, going off to hell. I was expecting possibly Bats or Wong to be lost for good. Wong leading the Midnight Suns. I thought he would be the casualty that we'd see on Stephen's side. Yeah,
absolutely. And you thought that actually he was going to die when he falls into the flames of hell. But Johnny Blaze is able, by his power now as the king of hell, to effectively make that not exist. And they have that great conversation. So I think, yeah, Wong is still alive very much. And I think the relationship between Wong and Stephen, has been repaired to some extent here. Again, it's that case of, you would help me, so that's why I came and helped you, despite the fact that, again, our relationship had not been great up till this point. Again, another example where he has this support and allies. Stephen, at the moment, is finding it difficult to see all this support that he's got. Yeah,
and I think that can happen to a lot of people. I think it's a really good choice for the storyline to have that in there. Again, really happy that we didn't lose Bats in the storyline.
Oh, definitely.
That feeling as well when we saw Clay earlier on in the books that she's in hell. We could have lost her as well, that this could have been a major event or a major impact on Clay. We haven't lost her. So none of Doctor Strange's true core group were lost in the book. Does that affect the book? Does that make it better or worse, do you think? Is it important that we should have lost a character? Or do you think these kind of events can survive on not losing characters, on it not being pinned to this is the event where X character died?
I think you can. And I think ultimately, yeah, as you say, we've lost, in inverted commas, Johnny Blaze. Because we see at the end of Damnation issue 4 that Doctor Strange is getting the Midnight Suns back together to go and rescue him. But I also think that this comic event, at least from a Doctor Strange point of view, was about his alienation from the wider world. It was about building relationships back together, realizing that people do still support him, will go out of their way to help him and rescue him, and repairing the damage of some of those broken relationships. And I think the really great thing here is that one of the relationships that matters so much now, the relationship between Doctor Strange and Zelma, is the reason why he can't see it and has to be told repeatedly about all these people that are there trying to help him, rescue him, support him, and work with him.
Exactly.
And I think that's why it's such a great little ending where he's on the phone to try and then be the person to build the relationship. He's the one that's got to go out of his way here to build that relationship back with Zelma, whereas everyone else has taken it on them to kind of just take it and repair that relationship, you know? So I think that has been one of the main and principal thrusts of Doctor Strange's arc here. It's kind of his redemption to some extent, him coming back into the fold, and that I really liked.
Absolutely, and I know I asked you the question, but I'll answer it myself as well. I definitely don't think an event has to be pinned on a character dying in the Marvel Universe. I think this was a really good idea for an event, as I said, having this realization that Stephen has friends and has allies that he doesn't depend on enough, I suppose, is a really important thing for this character. I think it's been done really, really well. And also, it's the Marvel comic universe, and usually if a character dies, they come back pretty quickly. What you mentioned there, John, the epilogue at the end of Damnation number 4, where he gets the Midnight Sons and Daughters together to go after Johnny Blaze and bring him back. Well, if we lost Johnny Blaze in this event, we've already been told he'll be coming back in the future. But this event didn't tie directly into that epilogue, which I thought it would, having read Damnation number 4. I thought, after reading this, Doctor Strange number 389, that's what it's going to be about. It's going to be about him joining up with the Midnight Suns and going to hell to bring back Johnny Blaze. And it wasn't. That's something they're going to save for a future book. And we don't know when that's going to happen.
Again, a really interesting choice from the creators here not to do that, and actually to really focus it down onto, these personal relationships between Doctor Strange and Clay and Zelma in particular, and his escape from the necrotic realm. Yeah, interesting choice here.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's all of our incantations.
Yes,
overall.
It is.
So, John, do you defend this issue of Doctor Strange number 389 and maybe the full Damnation event? How's it felt for you? Do you defend it?
I do defend this issue of Doctor Strange. I would give it 4 hell puppets out of 5. I really enjoyed this. I liked that it explained how they get out of this necrotic realm with the Avengers. I liked the sacrifice of the Avengers here, and the trust in Doctor Strange to make things right. We have the trust from Clay as well, in terms of, she tells it as it is, in the same way that Bats tells it as it is to Doctor Strange, that only a true friend can do. And in this case, ex-lover, former wife. So it's all these people coming together to support Doctor Strange. But ultimately, the crux of it is that he is the one that needs to also make that step to repair a damaged relationship with Zelma. And I love that it finishes on that. And I think in that sense, what Donny Cates and Henrichon have done here, and the way the creators have actually kind of taken a different focus for this last issue, where they focus in on Doctor Strange's personal relationships, him escaping the necrotic realm, and not the downfall of Mephisto. Mephisto is only mentioned here in relation to him winning that ferocious war against the other Lords of Hell to ultimately create the Hotel Inferno and come back and build his empire on Earth in Las Vegas because of the actions of Doctor Strange. And I think ultimately that's a really interesting lens to look at this on a more personal level here of the Sorcerer Supreme. So absolutely fair dues and high praise indeed. And I think for the Damnation event, I think for me, I absolutely have really enjoyed the Damnation event. Because, of course, it's with my favorite Marvel character. I think their treatment of him is just really, really good. It has felt complex. It's been personal. It's been about groupings. It's been about him and his antagonist in Mephisto, but also, I think the personal thrust, the tie-in comics have tied in really well with the main coverage of Damnation, I think, for Doctor Strange. I think that's worked really well. The utilization of Bats is just great. I mean, he's talking about whether Bats has survived. I would like to see a writer that has the kahunas to kill off Bats. Or kill off a ghost if that's possible. Yeah. They certainly put him in jeopardy in this, and that was kind of interesting because you were kind of going, will he survive in Doctor Strange's head? And actually, just a quick note, we do get Bats leaping out of Stephen Strange's head again, which I'm really glad that they did, because that's just such a great idea that Bats is kind of controlling Doctor Strange, and obviously making use of the opposable thumbs in all their glory. So for me, the tie-ins were really good to the main Damnation event. And I think with the Damnation event, certainly for me, my favorite issues were the first and the last. I think it got a little bit too recappy in issue 2 and issue 3. And I wonder if a longer series for Damnation, maybe 8 issues, would have worked better and maybe would have helped have some meaningful dialogue of maybe, say, Iron Fist or Moon Knight that really helped with their tie-ins, because the Iron Fist tie-ins were really, really good. Yeah. And yet he didn't really do too much within the main Damnation core event. Yeah. And I think maybe just an extra 2 issues, an extra 4 issues could have given that space to really have utilized Iron Fist and even some of the other characters as well. One of my other favorite characters is Brother Voodoo, and really not a lot happened there, to be honest. Yeah. Even Man-Thing only got a moment in terms of trying to save Wong, and you realizing that Wong is a man without fear. Sorry, Daredevil, but he really is. And I think they could have explored more of that grouping, and maybe that's what they will do. Maybe that's what the intention of this epilogue is, from Damnation issue 4. That this grouping is going to go on, and that we will get a bit more depth and breadth of these characters working together, interacting, and the trials and tribulations that they have to go through.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Derek, do you defend this issue of Doctor Strange, issue 389, and, indeed, the Damnation event?
Well, let's talk about Doctor Strange 389 first. I loved this issue. I really did. I loved that in the midst of this battle between hell and earth, what we get is a personal story about Stephen finding his friends and finding the true people that matter to him. I love that Clay kind of puts the point on it and says, I know you're not in love with Selma, but she is the one that matters most to you, like all of your friends do, and saying to them that you have many people around you. Just take a look, take a breath, shave, have a shower, think about it, and you'll realize how many people are around you. That's the central arc of this entire storyline. In relation to Damnation, the Doctor Strange issues are absolutely essential. I know you've been saying that we should have had an extended version of the Damnation event, but really, there's 4 issues in Damnation and 4 issues in Doctor Strange, and you have to read all 8 of those issues to get the full story. So it doesn't feel like you could pick up the 4 issues of Damnation and really get much out of it. We were joking about the fact that the intro to the Damnation number 4 book is 3 lines long and really tells you everything you need to know about the previous 3 issues of the book in 3 lines or 4 lines. It's kind of a bit of a joke there. Whereas you get something like this book, and it's got a huge paragraph written by Donny Cates at the beginning to explain what's gone on in the Doctor Strange event, because there's been so much in there. While I know that Iron Fist doesn't do much in the end of this book either, in Damnation number 4, we don't see much of Iron Fist, I do think his tie-ins were excellent.
Absolutely.
Using the Damnation platform as a jump-off point so you can learn about who he brings back from hell. You learn more about Iron Fist, about him sacrificing himself, possibly, to bring back other characters. So quite important if we get another Iron Fist run in future, which I really hope we do, and really hope that the writers stay on from this book, because they've been really, really good. And then we had Scarlet Spider, which I thought was a little bit of an introduction to the character. I like him, actually. I've never actually read much of Ben Reilly's Scarlet Spider at all before. I know him back from the Clone Saga back in the 90s, but that's about it. I think that's where most people left the character. And what they did there was something interesting for that character, but he is not used at all in the Damnation event. It was like as if...
he drives a dumpster truck to kind of save the Midnight Suns as they've just arrived in Las Vegas. Before the main big battle kind of begins, or it has just started. Exactly. Because it looks like they're getting overwhelmed. But after that, there's not really an awful lot. But I think, like you, I really enjoyed the introduction of Scarlet Spider from the tie-ins, just to learn a little more about him. And I think maybe in the same way as with Iron Fist, you're right, that jump-off point into that character was really good.
Yeah, and I think that may have been the problem with the Scarlet Spider books. I felt like they had a lot of heavy lifting to do to explain who he is. Iron Fist obviously has his own TV show, so a lot of people know the basics of who Iron Fist is. Doctor Strange obviously has his movie and is a central member of the MCU now, so a lot of people know who he is in general, so they don't have to do the heavy lifting of explaining who he is, what his powers are, why he's different from Spider-Man in Scarlet Spider, that kind of stuff. So yeah, I suppose Scarlet Spider is the one that was non-essential overall, but I enjoyed reading it. Iron Fist, as part of Damnation, was the one I enjoyed, probably second to Doctor Strange. It was a really excellent tie-in, but non-essential to Damnation as such. They just used Damnation as a great jumping off point to tell a really good Iron Fist story, and then overall Doctor Strange and the Damnation event as a whole, those 8 issues, I highly recommend them. I've really enjoyed reading those, and to be honest, I've really enjoyed podcasting about all of these issues and talking to all of the rest of the team that have been covering all of the books.
Absolutely. It's been great podcasting about comics. We did it previously on our Gotham podcast, and certainly this is our first big look at comics from our Marvel podcast, Defenders. So, really enjoyed that, and really interacting with the other podcasts on this crossover event has been really, really good. Yeah.
Speaking of which, we have a little bit of feedback in from Connor over at Sons of the Dragon, the Iron Fist podcast, who did that excellent coverage of the Iron Fist books. Connor says, "Hi guys, Connor here. Love your Doctor Strange talk. I felt this issue was a nice cap-off to the event, but extremely similar to that volume of Defenders, number 3, I believe, which also had Iron Fist, time travel, and why Earth had so many superheroes, which ended in him calling a girl. Which is actually pretty funny, since these are the 2 major stories I've read starring Strange, outside of him appearing in heaps of other comics. Do his stories always end like this, with him calling a girl in a mundane setting? Anyway, looking forward to hearing your thoughts."
Thank you, Connor. I don't think always it ends up like that, but certainly I think it is one of the traits of Doctor Strange. You've got his arrogance before he becomes the Sorcerer Supreme. But then I think you very much have these different elements where either he kind of sets himself aside from the rest of the Marvel Universe in the comics and is kind of being very meditative, or he's kind of being a bit imperious, really, along with Tony Stark and Reed Richards in terms of the Illuminati and what he does, or he's having to really defend Earth from mystical and magical threats from other dimensions, or he's making really difficult choices because actually he's working in a completely different way to maybe, say, the Avengers. You know, he has to... He's always looking at the longer game, I suppose, as always. And I, for example, I think that's why the time gem in the MCU film world has been so good, because I think the Sorcerers Supreme are really having to look at different times, space, dimensions, realms, and so on, outside of the comprehension, as Steve Ditko would say, of people living on Earth who are skeptical of this. And I think because of that, I think you sometimes really have to humanize Doctor Strange again. Absolutely. You have to really bring him back from being this all-knowing, very powerful Marvel character and to really hit him where it hurts. And I think in a lot of cases that comes down to his relationships, very much so, where you can rehumanize this very powerful character, bring him back down to earth to some extent.
Absolutely.
And I think that's why they do focus on his relationships with mortal beings, with other extra-dimensional characters, because that is something that, despite all his power, he has huge difficulty with, and it provides that springboard into him being vulnerable, very much so.
Yeah, and I think it's a tool that's kind of used by a lot of the writers to show you why Doctor Strange doesn't just spend all of his time in the astral plane playing around with his amazing powers. You kind of have to ground him a bit, you have to bring him back. So yeah, it's probably been used a few times before, Connor, but I do enjoy how it's used in the book here. I love that he's going to Clay in a very simple cafe, telling her this fantastical story, and there's no magic actually being used in the scene. It's just about their relationship, and then she tells him to go and talk to Zelma, which is really important that he mends that relationship, as John mentioned earlier on. It's really important to have that, where you have a really powerful character who just can't do a simple thing like make a phone call and apologize to someone that he's hurt in the past. That's kind of a really good tool to use with Stephen Strange to ground him back in the universe.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's certainly used effectively here.
Thanks so much for that feedback, Connor.
Yeah, thank you so much, Connor. Remember, you can also contact us through our website at feedback@defenderstvpodcast.com. You can also leave a voicemail for any thoughts on Damnation, on MCU movies, or any of the Marvel Netflix shows. You can just head over to defenderstvpodcast.com and click on the voicemail tab on the right-hand side. You can leave up to 90 seconds of your thoughts. And of course, we are over on Facebook. You can come and join our group over at facebook.com/groups/Defenders TV Podcast, or like our page on Facebook. And of course, importantly, if you've enjoyed our Damnation event, please remember to share the love and share the podcast. You can head on over to defenderstvpodcast.com and go to any of the subscribe buttons for any of your good or evil podcast catchers of choice to listen to Defenders TV Podcast.
Absolutely. And as I mentioned earlier on, make sure you check out all of the other podcasts that have been covering Damnation, from Into the Night, the Moon Knight podcast, who covered Scarlet Spider, to Sons of the Dragon, who did the Iron Fist coverage, and Inner Demons, who did the Ghost Rider coverage. It's been fantastic. Been great fun doing this event over the last couple of months. Very different for us. Hope you've enjoyed our coverage, and perhaps we will be doing a little more comic book coverage in future. But we have another part to our Doctor Strange event coming very soon. Later on today, we'll be recording our discussion on Marvel's gigantic movie Avengers Infinity War, which is what, part 5 of our Doctor Strange in the movies?
Yes, something like that.
Something like that.
Part 3.
I think it's 5 if we include the TV movie and the animated film. So yeah, 5 probably.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yes, all things Doctor Strange on Defenders TV Podcast, along with all things Marvel, Netflix, and the MCU films as well. And Defenders will also be back with the Marvel Netflix shows when Marvel's Luke Cage Season 2 is released on the 22nd of June. But in between that date in June and, of course, our release of the Infinity War review, then we will also be looking at Deadpool, which is the next on our Marvel movies slate in May 16th.
Yeah, I think it's out in May 16th here, so it should be, our review of it should be out pretty close to the 16th of May. Deadpool 2. That'll be a fun one. I know it's one of Chris's favourite characters, so it should be interesting to see what his thoughts are on the second Deadpool movie.
Yes, and of course, hopefully we will be covering some more comics in the future, and we may have a round table as well. We just need to organise it fully, where we hope to discuss and share all our views on the Damnation crossover event from our fellow podcasters.
Thank you so much for joining us for this event. As we said, keep it locked on DefendersTVPodcast.com for all of the things we'll be covering. Really enjoyed doing this event. Thank you so much for following along with us. Hopefully you've enjoyed our coverage of Damnation through all of the podcasts. We'll talk to you again soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, as always, for listening. It has been a pleasure, and we will speak with you next time. Bye.